yeah, let's get into the content of what we're doing today. We want to cover what is context in the context of AI, why lack of context is dangerous, why context matters for NGOs, and I'm going to touch on the UN principles for responsible AI because I think these are important for this sector. And then Mohammed's going to give some practical steps around managing context, stuff that you could use today. But then we're going to finish off with how ReportsAI manages context, so how we implement a lot of this stuff for you, and give a little example demo. So yeah, let's get stuck into it. So yeah, context in the context of AI. So in AI, context refers to the surrounding information the system has available when interpreting inputs and generating outputs. All sounds very technical, but like really, if you just want to comprehend that, you can think of it as a human would. If you have this genius, let's call it the LLM, it's this genius person, they may be very intelligent, but they really need some context and information around what you're asking them and what you're looking for them to give you a good response. And that's kind of how you can think of context when you're using an LLM. You need to give it access to information on what you're trying to ask it and the particular problem you're trying to solve for it to come out with the best response. So in practice, that means that when you do the prompt, how much information are you putting in there around what you're asking, but also how you want the output to look. It means that any of like the documents that you provide, so if you're uploading a bunch of documents, that's adding to the context that the model has to use to then give you an answer. So that's why the context is very important. And when you lack context, that can be an issue because if you don't really give it much to go on, it is just always going to come up with a response. And you'll notice that these LLMs are very good at just coming up with a response to anything. Even if you haven't really given it actually much information to go by, they're very good at just kind of assuming what you want, inferring. And this is actually leading to some trust issues in the digital space. Like you can see it with people are talking a lot about stuff that you see on social media, like how much of it is just kind of this fabricated information that's just being produced by AI. And that's something you kind of have to be concerned about because you might have heard this term thrown around, hallucinations. And a hallucination is essentially when if an AI tool doesn't really have much context, it kind of just makes an assumption, sometimes even just makes stuff up. And it sounds very convincing, but it may just be completely fabricated and not true. So these are things that you definitely have to be careful of when using these tools. And that's why that's why we're really emphasizing the importance of this context. And yeah, it's just high stakes reporting, which is obviously like the NGO donor reporting space. You can't allow AI tools to just be filling in the gaps with assumptions because then you're basically producing fabricated information in your donor reporting and that's going to damage trust. This one at the bottom here is most interesting. It was a survey done on donors and found that 31% would be less likely to donate to charities if they knew the charity used AI. And when you go into the details of this, it's essentially because they're concerned about information just being fabricated and communication just being with a robot rather than actually a human. So there's those two kind of things to consider. And that's why, again, it just comes back to trust. Trust is so important to this sector. So you have to really think about that. If you're going to apply AI to build capacity, that's great. But you don't want to also then end up damaging trust with your donors. So you have to use it responsibly, right? Because people are concerned that it's so easy to fabricate information. What if people are just using AI to just fabricate stuff? And that's obviously, you go from capacity, this great capacity building thing to actually something that damages your whole mission because you're damaging the trust with your organizations. So this is really, that's why managing context is so important and managing the outputs that you get from these models is so important. The UN have seen that the amazing potential that AI has for this space. At the same time, the UN have seen the risks. They've seen the risks around trust. They've seen the risks around data protection. They've seen the risks around bias. And that's why they've gone out and built these guidelines as a first principle for people within the impact sector and the NGO sector to look at these guidelines and try and shape the way that they're thinking about AI and using AI. Because it's important to think about, because at the moment, AI has just suddenly become so accessible to everyone. So we sometimes need to stop and think about what the risks are and how we manage those. So obviously UN first one, trust and accountability. In that point, when you go into their guidelines, it's really all just making sure that the outputs from the models are traceable, which is very important because if you don't know where the data come from, it might be fabricated, right? So it's like, how do you get around the trust issues of like when you're just like producing this information? So you need people to be, the outputs to be trusted, and for trust really kind of depends on accountability, right? So you're able to trace back to where you got the information from and people are accountable for it. That's how you emphasize trust in the space. And then next one that's super important is data protection. NGO and impact space, you're dealing with very sensitive information, and the UN is extremely concerned that data is on these vulnerable communities is just going to be getting leaked via these large LLMs. Because things like when you just use a generalistic model like ChatGPT or any other model that are out there and you don't have data protections in place, you are leaking that information. And it's not always obvious that that's the case, but that data is being leaked. So you have to really think about that. So the UN are trying to put that as a main point. Think about data protection by design. And then there's bias and misinformation. Because AI is spotting patterns in data, if you've got unreliable data inputs that are going in, you can sometimes build biases in your model. And again, if you don't have the traceability to where you're getting to these outcomes from, you could end up with these biases being introduced into systems that could actually be quite damaging to communities. So it's something to think about. And then when they go into education and capacity building, they're basically just saying that really everyone needs to have some level of AI literacy. And I mean, that's why we're running these sorts of workshops, is because it is very important that not just the people that are actively using AI, but just kind of most people at least have some general understanding about the limitations that it has and the potential risks, because that just means that you're able to interact with it without falling down any of the potential pitfalls, like leaking data, like just trusting the outputs as given, even if they are potentially fabricated, etc. It's just, so it's good for people to generally build up a bit of AI literacy.
All right, perfect. Okay. So I was getting into one point is basically, before even getting into the practical steps that we can take, I'm going to show you some prompt templates that we use if we have to do a one shot and directly generate better output. I'll go into that and how you can structure those prompts. But I want to get that one point across, just like Archie said, it's really important to understand that when we talk about context engineering, I mean, usually we mean the same thing, but depending on what you're doing in your organization, it might mean a bit of a different thing for you. One thing would be, for example, when I say context engineering to an engineer who's building AI applications, it's a different viewpoint, because then that person will be thinking about how to effectively manage the data in a way that allows the application to keep track of the memory of the interactions and all this kind of stuff. But today, what I'm going to show you is us in the organization at a personal level, whether you are in data analysis, whether you are in monitoring and evaluation, what steps can you take right now to improve the outputs of your interactions with the models? And how can you do that in a way that actually allows you to have accountability, to have trust in your output, and that allows you to reduce as much as possible hallucinations and to lose as little data as possible in the process? It's important to understand that hallucinations are just part of what these models do, not necessarily because the models are bad, but because of the way they're trained. And there are techniques that you can adopt today to reduce the impact of hallucinations on your output. But then again, it's really, really complicated, if not utopic, to have 0% hallucinations. But at least if you practice what we're going to show you right now, you can be sure that it's going to be extremely reduced. And if it is still part of your output, you'll be able to spot it quite easily. If you're managing context, think of it as just managing what you feed to the model. It's basically how to manage the memory of the model. That's how I like to explain it usually. It's like, I'm going to be interacting with this model. It's going to be generating my report, for example, or it's going to be generating an evaluation report of my task on the field. How can I manage its memory? How can I provide it with information in a way that allows the model to really have as close of an understanding of what I'm doing as I have it myself, right? So when the model has that, then the output, the report, the analysis that it does gets really, really better. So let me show you how we can do that quickly. So just before moving to my screen, as you can see in the slide, you have to be very specific in your prompts. I'm going to show you what an effective prompt template looks like, and I'm going to show you what I mean by being very effective. Provide as much information as possible. Here we said full data. I like saying here full information, because the data can be full, but then if you can extract the information in a more structured and logical way, then the model has a better output. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. How to structure your inputs. That's very important. I'm going to show you why that's important as well in the prompt template. Even understands your data initially. And critical, verify the outputs. The human review is essential, and it's also critical to everything you're doing, especially if you're working in the impact space. As of right now, as Archie said, the donors are really, really cautious about the documents that come out of AI, being able to cross-check every single sentence that gets produced by your model, detect quickly where things are hallucinated, where claims are made that are not really based on your data, or that are just assumed by the model because of what it just saw, or data that gets undermined. That's really important. This is why the human will always be important in the loop as of right now. We're not today talking about full agentic. And in the impact space, it's really, really better to keep that expert that you have in that loop so that the output gets cross-checked effectively. And then we can talk about how you can adopt tools, because what I'm going to show you works perfectly for small context. Let's say you have a quick like you have 3 documents or 4 documents with some information, you want to make your field report, it works quite well. But then you would probably be able to see the complexity when this scales. So if you are doing a quarterly report, that's a whole lot of data that you have to process. So the techniques that I'm going to show you gets a bit more complicated the more data you collect. But then if you understand the principle of what we're doing right now, then you can find your own ways or smarter ways to process your data in that sense. So I'm going to jump on to sharing my screen right now.
Good.
Perfect. All right, so before getting into like the experimentation, we'll do that together right now. But I would like to show you a prompt template that you can adopt today. You can share this with everybody, Archie, that if you follow, then your output will always be as grounded as possible in terms of what the models can do so far. So it is structured in a very specific way. We've done a lot of experimentation with these models to understand what type of input, if you're going to structure your input, what is the best structure possible for the model to not lose track of whatever you've been discussing. And we came out with this really simple template that you can use, right? So it's divided this way. You have to specify the role and the identity of the model. I'll go into that in a second. You have to give it the context, which is what we're discussing today. And then we're going to talk about how you can optimize that as well. You have to specify the tasks that have to be taken by the model. On the last workshop, we've discussed prompt engineering. We talked about like breaking things down into steps. We've talked about like using examples, multi-shot prompting. Today, I'm just going to show you how you can do that by just breaking down like the tasks that you're going for into different steps that the models can follow. This drastically improves the results, especially for reasoning models. I'm going to see the difference right now. And then you have to specify the output requirements. That's where you tell the model exactly what you want. And you can do that if you have a very specific template for your organization in terms of like sections here, then you can specify which sections you want. And then, I'm gonna show you how that works as well. You have to specify the quality guarantees. This is where you tell the model, this is what you shouldn't do, this is what you should do. Sometimes it all comes down to just explaining what the model should and shouldn't do. All these sections that I'm showing you, the reason why we're putting them into brackets like this, it has a semantical meaning for the model. So first, these models are great at understanding structured inputs. The prompt is an input. What we're giving to the model is the input. What it's giving us back is the output. They are great at understanding structured input. So usually what we do when we don't structure our model, our prompt is we say, you are, you help me with this. And then we just give it some context. And sometimes we're like, hello, ChatGPT, how you doing? I hope you're doing good. How's the family? I mean, we get a little bit more verbose with these models, but we're not really like technical in terms of like structuring our input. Just structuring the input can drastically improve the output because the model has a better understanding of what you're trying to do. Then we have the example formats. We've discussed that in the past workshop as well, when it comes to prompt engineering, providing some examples. That will work for simple tasks. For example, if you are generating like a field report, then it might not work as well here because providing examples of a field report, the entire report can quickly make you run out of tokens, or at least can make your context so long that the model start dropping some data. So this part would work for simple tasks. For example, simple analysis tasks, summarization tasks. That's why I highlighted it. In our case, we're not going to use it for field reports as well, but if you have some simple tasks and you already have some output that you've done before that looks like the ideal type of output that you'd like to get, then you can use it in your example format and it will drastically improve the output of the model. And then you insert your input here. Now, we're going to use, for this example, we're going to use ChatGPT. I'm going to go over every section and discuss some examples. For the role and identity, you can be like, you are a senior data analyst and reporting manager specializing in donor reporting for NGOs. This is pretty much you giving this model like a persona there. Now, the model is going to be a lot better at generating the output because it's going to use that persona as like its personality, putting this in quote unquote. We don't want to humanize these models too much, right? Then you specify your goal. So you can be like, your goal is to analyze the input documents that I'm going to provide for you and generate a field report based on the data or the insights that you can get in those documents, right? And in our case, then you go into the context. That's where you provide the knowledge that the model is going to use for your output. For example, here's the structured context you must use when reasoning. So when you say that, when the model gets here, that's what's going to be used as the basis of the text that gets generated. For your case, you can provide your organization information. It's critically important, actually, because if you are making a field report for the models and you don't specify this kind of context, then it gets a lot more generalistic. The report sounds good, a lot of text, but if you read it at the end of the day, it doesn't really mean much because it's not really specific to your use case. Absolutely not. But then if you provide this organization description, what you do, what the organization does, what you do in the organization, then the model can narrow down the quality of the output to your specific use case. So here you can specify the name of the organization, the mission, the stakeholders, the domain specifics if there's any. Then you can get into this report is for this specific project. Then you can describe the project. So you have the project scope, the objectives. If you have the key indicators, usually I would put the key indicators in the data section, not necessarily in the project part, but then you can specify any information that will be critical for drafting that report. So in the case of NPOs or NGOs, usually every report you're doing does have context. It's linked to a project you're working on. That project has concept notes, it has terms of references, it has a log frame, it has a work plan, it has a budget plan. I mean, it's always linked to those context in anything that you're doing. So if you have them, this is the right place to put them. I know it can get long. That's what I said. This is like a kind of like a it's good for small context, but when it gets bigger, you will need some specialized tools to handle this. But this is the place to put this information. Then if you have any constraints for your specific task, if you're making a report, for example, this is where you can put your donor obligations or donor requirements or your donor compliance rules. If you have them as well, you can put them here in the constraints. And then the model will then try to narrow again down to those and keep those in mind. Then if you have any additional notes, people like specifying, act like a professional person, like do this and do that. This is where you can insert those information as well. Then comes one of the most critical steps here is to define the input tasks, right? So if I'm making a report, I would think, okay, if I have to do it myself, what are going to be the steps that I'm going to follow? I'm going to go through my data. I'm going to read them. I'm going to extract all the interesting insights. That will be step one. Step two would be, okay, I'm going to identify the data that are in my notes that I don't have really like any traceability. So like if I put them, it's basically like I'm doing an assumption or a claim. Doesn't really fit there. Maybe I'm gonna drop those. Maybe I'm gonna keep them, or I'm gonna add some footnotes to them. This is step two. So that's extract interesting insights and drop all those that don't have a basis, right? Step three will be, if you're done with that, then you can draft the final output. So like I just put 3 steps here. Feel free to go deeper if you have a deeper level of expertise that you'd like the model to follow. You can do that as well. And I will show you which models are actually best at that. If you have reasoning models, they get even a lot better when you specify more steps. They get good at that. But then if you don't have reasoning models, specifying a lot more text can then lead to forgetting along the way. So you kind of have to know how to manage that as well. Just like we discussed in the last workshop, right, Archie, about choosing the right model for the right job. And then you have the output requirements. I keep this simple usually, and you can as well. You can just specify the sections. Section 1 should have this. Section 2 should be key findings. 3, recommendations. 4, it should be conclusions. And here you can also specify your output type. Nice bullet point list. I want this, I want that. Feel free to play around with it. I mean, the great thing about that is like if you're just doing context engineering, it's again like smarter prompt engineering. You can just use these prompts, and if you don't like the output, you can tweak it. That's the great thing about the models, right? And then quality guarantee. One thing that I will always keep here will be this first one, and then the rest will depend on my use case, is where I provide the documents that I have, the context that I have. You can work on these documents before providing them to the models, okay? So in my case, I'll show you an example. I was preparing that for this specific workshop. This is gonna be a quick example so you can see what that looks like. We're doing it for an NGO. It's called Moja Health. Here I specify what the model is going to do. Then I specify the organization name, the mission, and the stakeholders. One thing that I'd like to say here before continuing, here I'm giving it in plain text, which would work if there's not a lot of data. If you have a lot of data, then it will be better to even structure even better. People will talk about JSON. If you're not technical, you don't need to understand what JSON works. Let me just show you something simple. It could be like this, right? So I'll put like in a dictionary, and then I'll put something like organization name. Then here, I'll put the organization name here, okay? So doing things like this, and then I'll put here mission, and then I'll put the organization mission on the side of that, like this. Okay, so organizing it like that, we've realized that this leads to so much better results because the models then understand specifically what you're trying to do. They are so good at this kind of format, this JSON format. Some people will use other formats like XML. It doesn't need to be like exactly the JSON format, because when you say JSON, people think like it's really technical. It doesn't need to be. For example, if I put here our mission, this would work in some JSON, but in some languages, this would break. But in the model, with the models, this works perfectly. The model just wants you to classify information, just structure it, right? Just structure it. The name is in front. The mission is right here. If you do this, you will see a drastic improvement in the output that you get. Then, in our case, I'm gonna keep this in plain text. I'll let you experiment with the results. For the project, I also kept it in plain text. You can use that kind of structure format anywhere. You can use it here as well. For the data, I would usually use your key indicators of the project. You can do the same thing. Of course, you can't insert a direct table. You could. It will be wasting much of your tokens. I would advise you use like a structured style that you would define yourself, right? You can put indicator 1, 2 dots, and then just like we just did with the kind of quote-unquote JSON format. You can do the same thing as well. For this example, I don't have any data here. I'm gonna take this off. For constraints, if the documents that you're gonna use, you know the content is big and you don't want to put it in that part of the prompt so that the models doesn't get lost, you can just specify something like this. Refer to the style guide document in the input. Then in your input, you can put the content of the document. That will allow the model to focus on what to do, then what to do it on. Because if you mix and match, somehow the model gets lost in the process. This way, the prompt of what to do should stay clean. So here, I'm just going to put refer to the style guide document in the input. Then in my input, I'll put this document if I have it, right? So same thing here for the step. I'll put just step 1, read and extract key insights. Step 2, identify reliable data. And then step 3, draft the field report, taking into account all your instructions. And then I put the output requirements here. I just specify the sections in the document. And quite important here, I'm like, your output must be in plain format. If you're using other formats, you can do the same thing. Your output must be in HTML. Your output must be in Markdown. I'm doing plain so you can see a nicely formatted output on ChatGPT's screen. Otherwise, you can change this if you prefer Markdown that as well. And for quality guarantee, I usually like specifying only use the provided context. Do not make any assumptions or unverifiable claims unless explicitly deductible from my data. That's important here. It's not going to eliminate all hallucinations because, I mean, it's quite complicated to do that on one go, but it will help you reduce the level of hallucinations that the models do. And then for the user input, that's where I specify, for example, these are the field notes. Right here, I just pasted our field note document. It's quite long. If I wanted to, then I can be like style guide for the donor. And this is where then I'll put that content here as well. So as you can see, in terms of like the content of the documents that I use for the context, I'll put them at the bottom. And at the very top, I'll put the instructions so the model can start with that and then get into the data. So we're going to quickly test this as well together, right? If you want to see the content of the notes here they are. This is what's going to be used by the model to write this report. All I will do here is just copy this prompt, this structured prompt. Let me just go at the very tip of the top. Right here. Yes, let's not miss it. Then I can go to ChatGPT. 2 things that I'd like to show you before even getting into that. So first of all, choose the right model for the right job. It's important. GPT-5 has a lot less hallucinations than GPT-4o had or any past GPTs had. And GPT-5 as well, if you're using the paid version, you will see that the model, you have like the auto model that will try to like choose the right model for the right job automatically, so you don't have to do it yourself, which is a great functionality. And then you have the instant model that will just give you an instant information, like an instant reply. So there's no like reasoning steps there. Archie hinted to some important thing when he was going over the UN responsible AI guidelines. So the idea of being able to have traceable output, it's also in the reasoning model. Like, how did the model get to that response? So GPT-5 can help. If you use the thinking model, for example, and I'm sure you've used it before, you can see the thoughts that get generated. It's good for you to see, to know how the model actually got to your response, but it's also important if you're working in this impact space sometimes to keep that information as well, because it is accountability and it is traceability. It shows you what the model had to do in terms of thinking to get there. Some models do it automatically, like DeepSeek will always tell you how it's thinking, how it got to the response. Some models will not tell you because they are reasoning models, but then, just choose the right model for the right job. I can use auto here, so the model will automatically choose itself which model perfectly fits. And usually when I'm doing some narrative text, I like to use GPT-4o just because it's a bit more verbose than GPT-5. GPT-5 is like, it's just, let's get down to the job. I don't want to talk, So we're just going to paste it here. And you can still edit your prompt as well. And when you're ready, you can just shoot that into the model and just wait for your output. 2 things I like to explain here as well when this is going. One thing that I like to do if you're using ChatGPT is that you can use projects. So if your context is very large, meaning you have, like I said right now, you're working on a project, you have the log frames, you have the mail plan, you have the work plan. Using this structure of prompt is going to get quickly cumbersome and complicated because you have too much data to deal with. And the model itself is also going to be losing a lot of data because it has too much information to deal with. So what you can do is you can create a project and then you can put those files in your project so that anytime you interact with the project, the model is going to use that as its knowledge base. That can really help. One other thing that you can do that could help you is to create a master prompt that you will always be feeding to the model, which is just what we just did right now. You can do that. And you can just do something very simple, something that I like to do. But before getting into that, let me just show you the output. As you can see, it goes into the sections, it generates the documents. Again, it's never really perfect. It will lose some things on the way. For example, if you can see the jump here from section 1 to section 2, I don't see the content. If I can switch the model, I can ask it to like rewrite the section, but you're always gonna get something sensible. And as you can see, this is quite short because it's trying to compress everything it is saying so that it doesn't really like, first of all, it's like trying to like save a lot of tokens. Second, it's trying to do its best not to invent anything because you've specified that you don't want it to like create anything. We can switch the model. For example, let's go to GPT-4o. So you can see the difference in terms of verbosity as well. So I'm going to paste the same prompt, or I could have just asked it to just do the same thing and it's going to rewrite it. As you can see, GPT-4o will also do its best to compress the information so that nothing gets stated here that is not from your data, that's not verifiable from your data. So again, you can experiment with this. Obviously, if you have a lot of field notes, if this is a quarterly report, that's like so much data to deal with. Then this gets a bit more complicated. You have to get into data processing. Maybe we'll have to organize like another session about data processing, but then you'll have to go into your data, structure it, extract some information, make it like well fit for the model, then feed it into the model. Okay?
So I just wanted to get into to lead in basically from what Mohammed explained everything there to basically how we are managing context at ReportsAI. So when he was talking, basically, you heard Mohammed a few times refer to tokens. Now, in the context of context, the tokens are basically like you can think, to simplify it down, you can think of them as words, but like they're parts of words, but let's just think of them as words. There's a limited amount of tokens that the LLM can see at any one time. So basically when he says about using up tokens, you're basically using up the amount of visibility that the LLM has on the data that you're inputting. So it's important to also in your context management, think about how many tokens you're using, because especially with like generalistic tools like ChatGPT, it's going to then need to use tokens for its reasoning. And then so sometimes like the two outputs that Mohammed showed there were quite short outputs, like for a report. It's because it's already had to read the documents you uploaded, read that big prompt, and then it's had to reason and then produce you something. So there is like some limitations over that you can run into in terms of context sometimes. So it's something to think about. But just to lead on from there into like basically how ReportsAI does this, because when you dump a whole load of data into a generalistic tool like ChatGPT, because it has a limited context, sometimes it's going to leave some stuff behind if you just upload all your monthly reports for a whole year. It's going to have a glance at it, but it's not really going to be able to extract all of that information using AI, but it's just going to have to infer a lot. And that sometimes we can end up leading to bad assumptions when it's just inferred from your data. So as a first point, the ReportsAI platform extracts data first. So that part's not done by AI. The data extraction happens first so that no data is left behind. And then that data then gets structured in a way where it's easier for the LLMs to process. So the data is taken out, nothing's left behind, it's structured, and then it's fed to the ReportsAI context engine where there's been a lot of engineering to ensure that context is managed in a very efficient and practical way to ensure that you get extremely high quality outputs and extremely reliable outputs. So ensuring that they're very much grounded in your data. We've got checks that take place there, ensuring it has complex context of your compliance requirements. So a lot of the things Mohammed's gone over there and more are part of that ReportsAI context engine.
Definitely, I'm gonna keep it short this time. I mean, when you talk about context, I just love talking about this. How things work. Okay, so yeah, like you said, on ReportsAI is quite straightforward. I mean, it's basically the same like context management process, just handled for you by the system. Again, what we're doing is, yes, you can automate the generation of your report. That's really great, and it's grounded, and you're gonna see how we take care of the hallucination part. But the most interesting thing here is how you can automate your data processing from the time of collection. When you start collecting your data, whatever you've been doing in your organization, how to control the quality of that data so that the output can be at the utmost quality possible, and then how you can trace all the hallucinations and have an awesome report for your donors. So I'm just going to show you how that works. So ReportsAI, it goes all the way from your task management all the way down into automating your reporting. In our case, we're going to do the same thing that we just did, a field report. I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to call it Q1, let's see, failed report or something like that. I'm just keep it simple, right? And
Do you want to share your screen, Mohammed?
Is it my screen shared?
Oh, I think it's because I was still here, so I've stopped sharing mine. I can see yours now.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Hopefully everybody can see my screen as well. Okay, so All right, so right here, I'm just defining the report type, which is the field report. The great thing about the platform here is that you can define the compliance requirements of every report type that you have internally. You define this once and you never have to do it again because the platform just knows what a field report for your organization looks like, and it will take care of handling that process. Then I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna put a title, description, and then here I can define all the documentation that goes into this report. So that can be, for example, our log frame. That can be our work plan, our mail plan, whatever I would like to use as the basis of this project. So I'm gonna choose one. So Archie, which one do you want me to choose this time? The budget plan will be good, yeah. The log frame here as well. Yeah, let's just use this too. So you can mix and match file types here. It can be spreadsheets, doc files, PDFs, audio recordings, if that's how you define what the project is going to be about, video recordings, whatever you use as a file type, you can throw it in the platform. It doesn't matter. Like processing these file types is handled by the platform so that you don't have to. Here, I'm going to define what Q1 is going to look like. Let me go down to 1st of January all the way to March. Yeah. Yeah, 31st of March. I can define if we have a deadline for submitting this specific report. Again, this is reporting management, so it's gonna allow you to track the completeness of your report, the readiness. Is it complete? Is it ready? All the tasks have they been done? What hasn't been done according to what we plan to do? What can be done to improve that? It's gonna allow you to track all that in one go on one platform. So I'm gonna create a report project here. So it just appears here. I'm gonna reduce this. Okay, so Q1 field report, as you can see, all the information that here is zero progress. Okay, so now I can see the evolution of this report project. I can define tasks for this report project. Now, okay, so I'm gonna be like, let me create a task. The great thing of our platform is if you have planification that you've made for the month, you can literally just choose your planification and the platform itself is going to define all the tasks that are inside. It extracts it and it even proposes you improvements that you can do to improve the output of a task because now it knows your log frame, it knows what you're trying to do. So for example, I'm gonna choose this reporting plan. I'm going to choose extract tasks. And all I got to do is wait. It's going to take all the tasks in the documents. It's going to look at the log frame that we have because that's what we're using as complementary information. And it's going to check if the subtasks that I said I'm going to do can be optimized so that I can reach the results or the indicators in the log frame a lot better. This is just quite a straightforward process to do it. I could also create a task directly if I just want to do it myself. I could just sit and create one task.
Yeah, what's great about this as well is that because the platform has context of your organization, and it also, if you've got different users in there, it knows what each user's role is because that's also part of when you're filling out details in the platform. So when it creates these tasks, it can actually auto allocate them to people within your team. You can then adjust who they're allocated to, but it can kind of know who's best to allocate it to, which I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's great. It can infer or at least propose to you who could be in charge because it knows what Archie is doing in the organization. It tells you how high of a priority this is according to the indicators in our project. It tells you how long this could take. All this can be edited. I can sit down and edit everything. I'm going to delete a few so that we can get a bit faster. Archie told me right now, Archie, for time reasons, I'm going to reduce this. But as you can see, this was a lot of tasks that were derived automatically by the platform. I'm going to keep 2, okay, and create those tasks. Tasks have been created. Get directed back into the report project. And as you can see, I can follow how many tasks are pending, which ones have been completed, etc., etc. So I'm going to take a specific, and if I want, I can create one. Let me show you how that works as well. I'll just put here, for example, submit our monthly report our monthly report for January. I can do that. Here I have to put a description. That will be used as an evaluation process from our platform. If I want to go fast, I can tell the AI to suggest me a description because it really knows the organization. It knows what I do. It knows the project that I'm working on. It knows the log frame. It knows the concept notes. It knows the terms of references. It can infer, if I'm doing this, what could be the best way to handle this process? Then I will say this task starts today. I'm misaligning this, but it's fine. And it's urgent and has to be done today. Submit that as well. So part of the platform is like, as you can see, it's right here, it's urgent. And anytime I do something for this task, in our case, for example, if I do my report or if I do some activities, I will just come onto the platform, I will add my notes to that task. So it's like anytime I do something, I add it. The context is managed automatically. So you can do this for your like an annual report if you had to. We can add a year worth of like information. And here I can keep the document attached so that if I'm sending it to my supervisor, if you want to download this, you can do it in one click. I will just click on extract information. This process is done behind in the back end. You don't have to care about it because the processing, the context management is handled for you automatically as well. And just take a few seconds. And then it's all done, ready to go. I'll just add this note to my task. And that's for today. Tomorrow I can log in, do the same thing if I did something else. If I don't want to sit and write the file, I can just like do an audio recording at the end of the day and explain what has been going on and I'll attach it. However, the platform is going to be cross-checking the data that gets put into your notes. It's going to check if the data that you're citing is traceable, is accountable, if it can find where that data is from, if you can justify it. Otherwise, it will tell you you did that claim, but we don't really have anything to back it up. If you would like to provide it, this is what you can provide to back out that claim. So it helps you with suggestions as well. Right now, I have my notes here. If I want to download the file, it's right there. I can find it. I can find it. It extracts a summary of my notes, all my notes, the key insights, the actionable learnings, whatever it can find, and that's on my screen now. So when I want to generate this report, I want to do my field report. I come to my report page. I can do three things. I can evaluate the progress, which is a great way for me to test out if the data I've been providing to the platform for this project is relevant. Is it complete? Do I have duplicates? Do I have data missing, etc., etc.? If I evaluate the report project, it's going to evaluate everything, all the tasks, all the notes that have been appended to every task, and it's going to evaluate them according to all the information it has about the project, so the log frames, the mail plans, and it will tell you, here is the evaluation that I have. Here are the insights that I've extracted from this data. Here is the impact analysis of what we've been doing so far. Here are the recommended steps that we need to take right now if we want to improve the output of this project, etc., etc. And if there's some data missing, here are the people to reach out to according to the project architecture, who's in charge of what, of which task, of which information. This is the guy to reach out to, etc., etc. So if I think everything is good, I can generate my report. I can either choose to generate my personal report, and if this is like a team level report, I can generate a report for everybody. So like if I'm a program manager, for example, I can choose, everybody's notes, and then I will have like a team level report. Here, it's only me, so I can take only my notes. I choose the reporting style and the language. And if I have any specific prompts that I would like to give to the model, I can do it right here. And I can tell the model generate the report. Anytime you try to generate a report, the platform will still check out all the information it has about this specific report. And it will tell you, hey, this is what's going on right now. Some of these data is not verifiable. It is stated, but like we don't really have the sources for it. Hey, this is great. These are insights that we can take from this report. This project is almost done. There we go. Right? So for example, if you look at the final conclusion here, it will tell you the field report offers valuable insights, but requires improvement in data collection, action planning, and follow-up. And then to tell you like follow-up to effectively progress tasks against the program goals. It will even tell you that, so you know what's going on, right? But if I'm like, okay, I still want to do my report, I can generate my report. And now all I gotta do is wait. The platform takes care of the entire process for you. So right now it's collecting all the notes. It's like refining everything, extracting all the insights. The data that doesn't have anything to back it up, it's going to highlight it for you so that you know when you get the output, hey, look at this. This has to be cross-checked. So it's going to highlight those for you as well. You'll see the output. It's pretty amazing. And that's it. That's how quick you get it. You have the executive summary, you have your introduction, you have your activities, you have your beneficiaries reached. So by the way, this structure is taken from our report type that you can define once and it will always fit the style. If you have a template from your donor, you can import that template with the images, the tables, doesn't matter. You can dynamize it and it will always put the report in the template for you. So right here, the cool thing is, for example, as you can see, if the platform is like inferring some things or it thinks that some things are better for this report, it will tell it to you and it will highlight it. Okay, I'm inferring this. This is in your data, but we can improve this, or this means that maybe you can put it if you like, you can keep it if you don't want to delete this because I didn't find this in your data, but I created this for you, right? So this allows you to really up the trust that you have with your donors because you can now keep track of everything that's happening. And this is just a text editor, just like you will do with Google Docs, right? You can, edit the content directly if you want to. We have some cool features here that you might not find in Google Docs. For example, if you want to create visuals or if you want to change some text, you can just ask the assistant. For example, I can be like, can you make this into a nice visual for our donors? I can, literally just ask it to make it a visual. This is very simple, but I can be very specific, make it a chart, make it a graph, put forward this data, show this, in an interesting manner. Now, as you can see, it will generate like a really, really nice visual for me. It's a bit big. Let me reduce the size so you can see it in the report. Yeah, as you can see, it will take the contents right here to make it into like a very, very nice visual. If I want, I can still prompt it and be like, make the main color blue or like change this information and make this more specific. These are all manipulations that you can do. And as Archie said, I gotta be quick. And when you're done with the report, if you're happy with it, You can either convert it into an audio summary for people like me who just like to, if you send me a report, just send me an audio summary. I just want to know what's inside the gist of it. Or you can convert it into like a one pager if you wanted to, or you can just save it into your system. Our great platform there is like any document that you try to save into your system, it will check the compliance of the document and tell you this document is compliant or it's not, according to what our organization requires in terms of like compliance requirement. In our case, this is like a evaluation report if I wanted to. It's not really an evaluation report, but if I say it is, then it's going to check if it is really compliant with what our organization likes in terms of evaluation report. If it's not, it will tell you this is not compliant. This is why it's not compliant. And you can check it quickly. And RJ, maybe just to close the demo, all the documents that you have into the system, you can put them in your knowledge base if you want. And if you have any questions about what project you're working on in your organization or how far along you are on anything, you can just come to your personal AI model that we've created right here at the top that is connected to your documents, and you can just ask it a question, right? For this, you see, it will generate a compliance score. It will tell you why it's like, okay, it's not bad, but this is why it's not compliant for like an evaluation report. And this is what you can do to improve it. In my case, I can just say, okay, well, it's good. 16 out of 20 is good enough for me. And I can just save it into my knowledge base. And if I have any questions about this project, if the document is in my knowledge base, I can just come into my personal AI model, which is right here at the top. I can either use GPT-5 or Gemini 2.5, depending on the one that I want. And I can just ask it questions about the project, right? I can be like, how far along are we with our indicators for the Safe Earth project? Archie, I think you can take it over from here. You know, I'm not going to show too many things after this, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been an amazing demo. And I think really what to take away from there is those compliance steps that are at every stage. So from when Mohammed uploaded those notes at the start, you got an evaluation report that checked the uploaded data for both completeness and relevance. So you're checking at the human input level that the data is strong enough, it's complete enough, and it's relevant enough to complete that task. So you're checking at that stage. And then when it comes to actually generating the report, it has context of the compliance requirements of that report type. And then it also ensures that it's very much grounded in your data inputs that have already been checked for completeness and relevance. And then when it then produces the report, anything that's even been inferred from the data, so conclusions that the LLM has made, the AI model has made, it highlights those in yellow for you. And this is because we're always trying to ensure that there's a human in the loop to just check through the outputs and ensure that everything's correct, because we want to be as trustworthy and reliable as possible. So you're then getting those highlighted parts in the report that human can check over, but you can see that the quality of the report is extremely high. You can add graphics really easily. I think that's an amazing part. You can rewrite anything with AI. It's all really gives you so much power to shape the report to how you want it. And then once you're finally happy with it all, you just submit it to the platform. It's going to give you a compliance score, and it's going to tell you how to improve the compliance of that particular document. So again, it's using AI to auto assess for you, but then it's always got that human input to read through that. And only when you're happy with it and you feel like it's done and ready, you can then send it off. And I think that's amazing to see that output that Mohammed's got there. The access to your organization knowledge space is really impressive. It saves so much time.
Yeah, it gives you the data back. It tells you where to find the data, where it found the data. Again, traceability, accountability, very important, and how far along things are, and even asks you, do you want it to like help you with other things or improve your output? And yeah, so that's about it that I wanted to show you in the demo. And we have a lot of integrations. Maybe I'll invite everybody to test out the platform. I mean, you could find integrations if you use some specific tools. We could connect them into your ReportsAI account as well, and then you can experiment with it. So yeah, I wanted to show you how we handle context management. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, thanks so much. I guess we're coming to the end. If there's any questions basically on what we covered today, I saw someone's asking if you could share the document from earlier. We can share that along with the recording of today. We'll share the recording and we'll share that document. But yeah, I would encourage any of you that are interested, like in the power of this platform and how it kind of makes using AI very accessible, but also very like safe and with compliance checks at every stage. It makes it a lot more accessible for people working in the NGO space. So if you're interested, yeah, please reach out to us. We're always happy to give like one-on-one demonstrations to your organization. We can liaise with your IT team as well, because I know that like external tools, even the likes of like ChatGPT, etc., tend to get blocked by the firewalls of your organization. So you might find difficulty just trying to log on yourself. So if that's the case, which is most likely to be the case, because every organization is trying to protect their own data, right? Then we can arrange demos with your team we can also liaise with your IFC teams to ensure that you can implement the platform into your workflows. And as Mohammed just explained in there, we've got a whole bunch of integrations as well. If you want to integrate even deeper into your workflows and automate more of the processes, that is also an option that we can discuss. So can we get up on Google? So yeah, it's a browser-based app. Do you want to cover that, Mohammed? Someone asked, can we get the app on Google Apps? Is it? You're on mute. You're on mute.
You can access on Chrome. It's really just a web platform. You can access it on any of the web browsers that you have. Definitely, Archie will be reaching out to people with the links as well, the document and the links for you to experiment with either our platform or like the prompt structure that we've presented as well.
Yeah. So there's not actually like an app that you have to download. You just access it via the browser. So there's no need for to be accessing by an app store or anything. You just literally log into reports-ai.app and you can just access all of that power just via the browser. Any more questions?
I mean, if people have other questions, they can just send it to us. I think we're
good. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we can wrap it up since we've overrun. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. I hope you found that insightful, and also hope that that we keep in contact, because we run these sorts of workshops a lot. We're trying to help with the responsible implementation of AI in this space. So you can follow us on LinkedIn. We're always posting a lot of content there. And if you've got any ideas of future workshops or things that you're interested in, you can also let us know, and we can explore that in the future.
Thank you all.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody. It was a pleasure to see you on the next workshop.
Take care.